Masechet Moed Katan, Daf Kafchet Amud Bet and Kaftet. And with this, we plan to complete Masechet Moed Katan. So we begin with the very last Mishnah of the Masechet, Nashim B'Moed Me'anot Avalo Metapechot. On Chol HaMoed, although one may do a burial, on Yom Tov also we do a burial, we can't wait too long. Nevertheless, we minimize the expressions of grief, and so on the Moed, the woman may do this wailing called me'anot. We'll see what this. It comes with the dagesh in the noon. It probably refers to being torturing oneself or response, something like that. Aval lo metapechot, but they don't do clapping. That's a bigger expression of grief, not appropriate for the holiday. Rabbi Yishmael omer hasemuchot lamita metapechot. Rabbi Yishmael, however, disagrees and says those women who are very close to the bier, they would in fact clap. So right there, that's probably where the mourners are, the most intense grief. So even on the holiday, one can do that. So Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, those are happy days, but less important than the regalim. And so on those days, you can not only do the me'anot, the inui, but also doing the clapping. But on both the major holidays and the minor holidays, we do not do lamenting. Once the burial is finished, then we stop altogether, and no more wailing, no more clapping, nothing at all, because we have to observe also the happiness of the holiday. And so, while we're in the procession, it's appropriate. You're not going to, you can't celebrate while you're going to burial. But once it's done, we did what we need to do right now. We'll be further mourning after the holiday finishes. And so that's then the women stop. What does that mean? That everybody is wailing together. So here, see, this is not from ana as meaning respond. Scratch what I said before, but rather inui, number one, either suffering, or inui like ghanni in Arabic. Anu ve'amiru, as also say, it means to sing. So singing, but here in a sad way. So this is wailing. Whereas kinad, lamenting, that's where one woman would would lead, and everybody would respond to her. So the responding is actually the kina, not the inui, and that is a deeper level of mourning, because I presume that leader, she would be a poet, and she would be able to say things that would really arouse the crowd to grief. Yirmiyah says, referring to the destruction, make sure to teach your daughters wailing and everyone her neighbor lamentation, because there's going to be so much destruction. And so you see that people, the leaders are, the women leaders are teaching the others what to say, and they are following and responding to her. So call and response, lament. So this was in the past and the current. And sadly, we need to mourn over those who pass away. But in the future, the pasuk in Yeshaya says that Hashem will take away death forever and wipe away the tears from all the faces, and take the reproach of his people off from the earth. Radak explains it doesn't mean that there will be no death at all in the future, but there will be no unnatural death caused by persecution, destruction, human evil. And so this is referring to an end of exile, an end of that type of death and persecution. This is a very hopeful pasuk, and this is also the pasuk that we say at the end of Shiva, when we're going to pick someone up from sitting, we recite this very pasuk. We also recite it each day after the Siduk Hadin, to say, we accept this, we are sad now, but we hope that Hashem will stop in the future. So this is a very important pasuk in the liturgy of Avelut to symbolize this ending. And it's important that this is the very last Mishnah. So if we're learning only Mishnah, see the Mishnayot, even though this Perek deals with a lot of difficult, sad topics, it ends on a positive note, as is appropriate. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. Man Amaran. What would the woman say when they were wailing? Amarav vaila zla vaila chavila. There's certain standard formulas, and they would say, "Woe to the one who is departing! Woe to the pledge." Meaning Hashem gave us a soul, but it doesn't belong to us. We borrow it for some time, and then so eventually, when the loan is due, we have to give back that soul. So that's the pledge for our lives. In a way, that's kind of comforting to think that we should be grateful for the time that we do have. Amar Rava Neshe de Shechen Ziv Amaran Hachi. So Rava is quoting the woman of the city Shechen Ziv, and they were known to be great poets and also witty, and sometimes they spoke in riddles. And so we're going to see a few quotes from them. The quotes are difficult to decipher. There's a lot of different textual variants and many opinions about what exactly they mean. But we'll try.
Oh, sorry, Rabbi. Where is that city? What part?
It's on it seems to be on the Tigris. That's it's identified with is believed. So I don't we don't know exactly where it is, but it's probably somewhere near Mechoza, because Rava lived in Mechoza and he's one quoting all these statements. So maybe he visited there. Good. And they would say Vaila Azla. So here they would say that's one thing they said. We quote okay, similar to what Rav said. Woe is to the person who is departing. Woe to he who has to give back his pledge. God they said the bone has been removed from the jaw and the water returns to its kettle. All right, try to figure out what that means. Several different explanations. One is that when someone died, especially a child, there was a custom that the father would remove a tooth from the child and keep it to have a physical memory of the child. And so that would be the bone that's being removed from the jaw. That would be a tooth. And then to clean it off from maybe if dirty or disease, they would boil it in water. So that was part of the ritual. And so get the water, put it on the kettles to clean off the tooth, and then the father would have it for a long-term memory. So maybe it's referring to that. It might be referring to something like the time going backwards. Like after you pour water, you can't really get it back into the kettle boiling. And so too, this person was alive and we can't get him back. He's going back to the earth, his soul going back to heaven. So returning to where it came from. Okay, something like that. Mountains, you should cover yourselves in mourning because this person who died is the son of a distinguished person. So mountain here probably referring to itself something that is exalted. And just like the mourners wrap themselves to express their mourning, we want to emphasize how great the mourning should be for this great person by even saying the mountains should cover themselves. We've seen this before, that we kind of call upon nature itself to come and mourn for. And when some sages died, nature itself had calamities were experienced because of that. Another expression of these women says, lend out a cloak of fine wool as a burial shroud for a free man whose sustenance has been depleted. They probably said this about someone who was wealthy and lost all his money, and now at the end of his life, his estate didn't even have enough to buy a proper burial shroud, and so maybe this is calling upon people to try to donate a little money to help bury this formerly rich now person who's now in poverty. This seems to be referring maybe to the same person or same type of person, a person who was running his whole life and doing business and successful until he got to a bridge or some point, and he fell and he lost everything, and now he has to actually borrow money in order to pay for his funeral. The woman would also say, the merchants will be examined, their place of business will be checked to see if they are honest. Maybe they said this about someone who was very honest and should be a great example. Or maybe, they often spoke in wit. And so maybe they said this about someone who there was rumors that he was dishonest, and learn from him also to not do that. They would say, death is like death, but suffering is like interest. The point is that everyone needs to pay the basic debt. There's no way getting out of it. The only difference is how much interest do you have to pay, and interest meaning the suffering that one may or may not suffer when with disease or other things during their lifetime and near death. It's like everyone has a mortgage. The only question is what's your interest rate to make it more affordable or not. So you see that there's a lot of a stoic type of philosophy that these women are expressing, and hopefully comfort people through that. Tanya, Rabbi Meir Omer, Tov lalechet el bet Evel legomer ad v'achai yiten el libo. Pasuk in Kohelet says, better to go house of mourning than to a house of feasting, because that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. In other words, when one goes to a bet Avel, one remembers what's important in life, remembers priorities, and that's the idea of the pasuk. So devarim shel mita. What is a person going to take to heart if he goes to bet Avel? Matters of death, and then we'll say, I have certain things I want to accomplish in my life, and running after nonsense it won't get me to those places. And so furthermore, someone that eulogizes others, right, spad, he will be eulogized. If someone helps out and in burying others, so then you can be sure that when it's his time, others will make sure to bury him. Someone that loads words of praises and eulogies and saying nice things about others who passed, then when he passes, they also will say nice eulogies about him. And someone that raises his voice and weeping and wailing for others, when it's his time to go, they will remember him for good and also wail and cry over him. So this reminds me of what Yogi Berra used to say: I always go to other people's funerals, that way they will come to mine. This last item, others interpret the opposite. Not that one who raises his voice, others will raise their voice over him, but the opposite, someone who does not raise himself, they will raise him. Meaning someone who does not raise himself with pride and say, I'm so important. So someone who is humble, then he will be raised, praised. His reputation will be positive. It's better to be told, step up here. Better to sit back in the back of the audience and someone say, come and sit up on the stage and give you honor, than the opposite. If you go assume, I'm a very honorable person, I better sit right on the dais, and then someone says, no, you don't belong here. Go back to the back row. And so always better to be humble. Tenor banan kishemetu banav shel Rabbi Ishmael nichnesu arba'a zikenim lenachamo. Okay, Rabbi Ishmael is the famous colleague of Rabbi Akiva, the third generation of Tanaim. He lost a couple of his sons, sadly, and four of his colleagues came to comfort him: Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Yosef Gelidi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Tarfon. So before they went in, they kind of had a little huddle outside of the Bet Avel, and Rabbi Tarfon says, "Deu shechacham gadol hu baki ba'agadot. Al yikanes echad mikem letoch divrei chavero. Amar Rabbi Akiva v'ani acharon." Rabbi Tarfon says, be careful. Rabbi Ishmael is a great sage, and he knows lots of Agadah, so you can't just repeat to him the same old stuff that everybody always repeats at a Bet Avel. So say something interesting and new, and also don't interrupt each other. Don't start arguing. No, that's not what it means, right? Because there's all sages here together, right? There's not the time and place for that. So Rebbe Akiva says, I want to go last. It probably is the hardest to go last, right? After everybody gives their chidushim, now you have to go and add something further to it, or maybe you want to make sure that nobody would interrupt him. Okay, and they all, in fact, speak along the same lines. Patach Rabbi Ishmael ve'amar. Maybe it means don't interrupt. Don't try to outdo each other, right? There's not a competition here. Okay, so Rabbi Ishmael spoke first. He's the one that's in mourning, and he has to speak first in order to give permission to the mourners to speak, right? The mourner cannot say anything before the comforters may not speak until the mourner speaks first and gives them permission. So Rabbi Ishmael says, Rabu avonotav. He's speaking about himself. He says, my sins are great, right? That such a terrible thing happened to him. He's blaming himself. Techafuhu avelav itzriach rabotav pam rishona ushniya. And now I have bereavement one after another. He lost one son and then another son, and to add insult to injury, he has to trouble his teachers to come not once but also twice and come visit him. Right? His colleagues, and teachers, they have other things to do, and so he feels bad. He feels bad about himself. He feels bad for his sons, and he feels bad that everybody has to come and visit him again. Okay, well, so with that, he shows that he wants to accept their comfort, and so Na'ana Rabbi Tarfon ve'amar. Rabbi Tarfon speaks first. Achechem kol bet Yisrael libku et haserefa. He quotes the death scene of Nadav and Avihu, and all of Israel cried over the fire that came down and killed Nadav and Avihu. We can learn something from this Makava Chomer. Mad Nadav Avihu shelo asu ela misvah chat. Tichtiv yakribu bnei Aaron et adam elav. Kach banav shel Ishmael achat kama v'chama. And look, Nadav and Avihu, they only did one good deed, which I'm sure they did many good deeds throughout their lives. But the point is, within this story, we're only told about one good deed that they did. That's they brought the blood. That was part of the avodah on that day of inauguration. And even though they only did one good deed, yet they're remembered for good, and all of Israel cried over their loss. So, Kal Vachomer, the sons of Rabbi Ishmael, who were much greater, they did many, many great deeds. So everybody will be sad over their loss, and their reward will be so much greater. The second sage said, regarding Aviyah, the son of King Yerovam, the evil king who split off and from the south and made the north, split the north from the south and made the northern kingdom. And then he said, anyone in the northern kingdom, you have to go worship at the idols in the north, and you're not allowed to go to Yerushalayim, to the Bet HaMikdash. That's what Yerovam said. When his son died, the whole of Israel mourned over him. So what was so good about him? Yerovam did one good thing. It just says one good thing. So if he, who did only one good thing, and yet everybody, all of Israel, mourned over him, so all the more so to be Ishmael, who did many good things, they will earn the merit that everybody will mourn over for them for their great deeds. What is the one good thing that Aviyah did? So we have two opinions. One says that he was supposed to stand guard to make sure that no one from the northern 10 tribes would pass the border and go to the south to try to bring a sacrifice to Yerushalayim. See, if they would go to Yerushalayim, then they to the Bet HaMikdash, then their allegiance might be to the southern kings, and they didn't want that. Anyway, one time he was supposed to be a guard. He left his position as guard post, and he went to the Bet HaMikdash in Yerushalayim for the holidays. So you see, that's a good thing he did. That he ignored he went against his father and did the proper thing. And others say, along the same lines, he removed the guards that his father had placed so that other people could go. So not only did he go himself, he actually went against the orders of his father, opened up the road, and allowed other people to come to Yerushalayim. And so he did one good thing, and he was remembered for good for just that one thing. So all the more so, Ishmael's sons. Third, Na'ana ben Azariah Amar B'Shalom Tamut Misrefot Abotecha Melachim Harishonim Ashir Lefanecha Ken Yisrefu Lach. Regarding King Sidkiah, who rebelled against Bavel and did not listen to Yirmiyah. So he was really not a great king. But nevertheless, Pasuk says, Yirmiyah says that you will die in peace and you will have the burnings of your fathers. That means that when a king died, they would make a big bonfire and they would burn all of his stuff. So that the idea is that no one else should be able to use his throne, his chair, his bed. And so you'll get the same honor that they'll make a big bonfire for you as was done for the kings before you. Now, even though Sidkiah was not a very good king, but he did one good thing. When Yirmiyah was thrown into a pit, Sidkiah went and took him out of the pit, saved his life. So for that one good deed, he's remembered for good and he will die a peaceful death. So too, to be the son of Ishmael, even though they died, they will be remembered for the much more good that they've done. And lastly, Pasuk in Zechariah, referring to not clear who, maybe the death of the Mashiach or death of someone, and that day is going to be a day of great mourning, like the mourning for Hadad Rimon in the valley of Megiddo. Who is this Hadad Rimon? Nobody knows. Rav Yosef said, if not for the Aramaic translation, the Targum Yonatan, that we spoke about back in Megillah Daf Gimel, who explains it. It's not just a literal translation, but explains the references. If not for the Targum Yonatan, nobody would know who this Hadad Rimon is. And here's what it means. And here's the translation. On that time, there'll be mourning in Jerusalem. Bar Omri diktaliyate Hadad Rimon bar Tavrimon, as great as the mourning for Achav. Now Achav was a very evil king, and yet he deserved to have a great mourning for him. He died in battle, and the battle, even though we don't know this from elsewhere, this battle, Hadad Rimon was the person who killed him in battle. And even though from the pasuk it sounds like Hadad Rimon is the person, in Bigat Megiddo is the place. The Targum has it referred to two different people. Hadad Rimon, that's Achav, who Hadad Rimon killed, and Bigat Megiddo is referring to Yoshiyahu when he was fighting against Paro. He was killed in Bigat Megiddo, and he also had great mourning. Well, Yoshiyahu was a beloved and good king, and so the point is that both of these kings had big funerals. Now, why did Achav deserve a big funeral? In that war with Aram, King Achav did this, the one good deed of his life, which is that even though he was wounded in battle, he nevertheless had himself propped up in his chariot to make it look to the onlookers that as if he was still alive and well, so to give them encouragement to keep fighting, right? If he would go and just stop and leave the battlefield, all of his soldiers would lose heart and stop fighting. And so this is something that he really did self-sacrifice even after he knew he was going to die. And so therefore, for that one good thing, he was mourned a great mourning. Sons of Ishmael who did good deeds their whole lives, all the more so they will be greatly missed and mourned. Okay, that's the end of the story. And now later I'm going to analyze a couple of the points there regarding, says Rava asks the Rabba Marmari, regarding Sidkiah, the Pasuk says, you will die in peace, right? We just read that Pasuk. But when you actually look what happened to him, the Babylonians captured Sidkiah. They killed his children in front of him and then blinded him so that the last thing he would ever see was the death of his children. That doesn't sound like dying in peace. Right? Although they didn't kill him, he lived the rest of his life in jail. But this doesn't sound like a Bishalom Tamut. So what's the answer? Oh, he lived long enough that Nebuchadnezzar died first. And so even though he went through this terrible suffering, nevertheless, just knowing, while he's sitting blind in jail and hearing the news, Nebuchadnezzar, who did this to him, died, that was enough to say about him, Bishalom Tamut. Another question, the same sage. Hashem says to Yoshia, the good king that we mentioned, that Hashem says, I will gather you unto your fathers. You shall be gathered to your grave in peace. So he's going to die in peace. Well, what happened? How did he actually die? He died in battle, and the archers threw so many arrows in him. So many arrows. We're learning it from the doubling Yoru Hayorim, that he was like a sieve. His body was full of holes. So do you call that dying in peace? And the explanation is, although he had a brutal death on the battlefield, nevertheless, he did not experience the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash in his lifetime. And so he knew things are keep going. So that mental knowledge means he dies in peace, right? The dynasty continues, the nation continues. So not in a personal way, but in a national way, things are peaceful. Okay, this is maybe regarding to general halachot, but also that story where Rabbi Shmuel has to speak first. And so here's the halacha that the comforters may not speak until the Avel speaks first. Right? Because there says that his friends come and they sit on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, and no one says a word because they saw his suffering was very great. Finally, when the Yov spoke, then they were able to open their mouths, and they didn't stop speaking for 40 chapters. Only then did Eliphaz begin to speak. Okay, when people are sitting around and the comforters are come to comfort the mourner should be sitting at the head of the table. שנאמר, אבחר דרכם ואשב בראש ואשכון כמלך בגדוד כאשר אבלים ינחם. Pasuk in Yov, I chose out the way I sat as chief and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforts the mourners. The point is that just like we said before, even if a Nasi walks in, the Avel doesn't have to stand up, right? Everybody's coming to show honor to the Avel, right? That we're taking time out to come and visit him, and so he should feel special at this time. And that's the point of coming to cheer him up, that we're coming all this way. So therefore, he should sit at the head. Okay, now this pasuk really means kasher avelim yenachem, like one that comforts the mourners. So here it says, I'm going to sit as a chief, like someone who comforts the mourners. So the pashat sounds like it's the comforter who is sitting at the head, not the mourner. So we ask, Yenachem acharini mashma. Yenachem sounds like he is comforting someone else. Yenachem ketiv. You can, it's written, there's no nikudot, so you can read it any way you want. And so it can be read as Yenachem, he who is comforted. So I will sit like a king, like he who is comforted, who gets, everybody comes, all the dignitaries, and comes and sits around him, and he is at the center. Another source for the same law. Mizrach seruchim. Mizrach nasa sar lisruchim. So we are taking the words of this pasuk and separating them. So mad and zach. Someone who is mad, who's bitter, and zach, overwrought, will be like a sad, changing the samech to a sin, will be like a head, meaning sitting outstretched at the head of the table. Okay, now we're going from negative to positive, and he says, that a groom on his wedding day also should sit at the head of the table. There's a lot of interesting parallels between funerals and weddings. Both have 7 days, both have encircling. Let's go through a whole list one day. But here's one of them. So a groom sits at the head of the table. Shneimar kechatan yechahen pe'er makon barosh av chatan barosh. Ishaya says, like a groom bedecks himself with a garland. Like a kohen. So the word to bedeck himself is yechahen. Kohen usually sits at the head, right? So whenever you're sitting, whoever has the greatest dignitary, who often is a kohen, will sit at the head. But at a wedding, the groom, or at a sheva berachot, the groom gets that place, and other dignitaries sit next to him. Okay, how do you know that a kohen should sit at the head? So when we say we should make the kohanim holy, how do we do that? How do we make the kohanim holy? In any matter of kedusha, so that he will be the first. He gets the first aliyah. He'll be the first to make the zimun for Birkat Hamazon. And when you're taking food, you offer the kohen to go and take it first. Okay. Amar Rabbi Chanina kasha yesiyat neshama taguf kesipori befi haveshet. Rabbi Yochanan amar kiftire befi veshet. Okay, even though we saw in the story yesterday that when the couple of those great sages died, they asked, can you come back and let me know how it was? And they said, were you in pain? And in those cases, they said, no, it was not painful. It was just like taking hair out of milk. Well, that's true for those great tzaddikim, but not necessarily true for everybody. Rabbi Chanina says a soul's departure is like different ways to understand this. A knotted rope passing through an eye of a ship's rigging. All right, you have to be a sailor to know what that means. But I guess these big ropes is difficult to pull them through. But veshet might just be the esophagus, and sipori maybe being a bone of a bird, or some say a nail, something that is not going down right. And imagine swallowing something sharp or something difficult, having a choking feeling. Not a good feeling. Well, he says that's what it's like. Rabbi Yochanan says something like that. Kiftireh, maybe some say it's a mushroom or something or other passing through, again, veshet, maybe the esophagus. So that kind of something that's kind of choking or something stuck. So not a good feeling. Lech beshalom. And if lech beshalom, ela lech leshalom. When someone is taking leave of someone who passed away, he should not say go to peace, but rather go in peace. Whereas if you're saying goodbye to someone who's living, the opposite. You should not say go in peace, but go to peace. What is the difference? And if departing from someone who was who died, say bishalom. Hashem says to Abraham, you will go with your fathers, meaning you will die bishalom, in peace. The idea is that once a person dies, they are already in a state of rest. Rest in peace. They are already in shalom, and therefore go in your state of shalom. They don't have to go anywhere else after that. So they already are in, or they are already be shalom. Whereas haniftar min hachai lo yomar lech beshalom ela lech lishalom. Saying goodbye to someone who's alive, you say go to peace. Because it's active, right? They're going and continuing on and seeking good peaceful things. David shamar lav shalom lech beshalom elach v'nitla. David said to Avshalom beshalom, and well, he didn't know this was going to happen. But that after he left there, Avshalom was hung. So you say beshalom is not the right way. That's you say to someone who died or is going to. Yitro shamar leMoshe lech leshalom halach v'yislech. Yitro, when he departed from Moshe, he says, you go to peace. So he's saying you're going on a journey, you're continuing and being active, and you're not in peace yet, because when one person is still alive, you never know what's going to happen. So you hope that you will eventually arrive in peace, go to peace, but they didn't arrive yet. And so therefore you say lech leshalom. Amar Rabbi Levi, kol yasim bet haKnesset, the Bet HaMidrash, Bet HaMidrash Bet HaKnesset, zocher mekabel penei shechina, shenemad yelechu mechayil el chayil yedel Elohim b'Sion. Okay, speaking about people going places, someone who goes from the Bet Knesset, he goes there to pray in the morning, and immediately goes to the Bet HaMidrash to go and study Torah. And when after he studies Torah, he goes back to the Bet Knesset to go and pray Mincha. So this person will merit to greet the divine presence. As it says, Yelechu, those who go from one strength to another, from Bet Knesset to Bet Midrash and back, they will merit to see God in Sion. Finally, Amar Rav Chiya bar Asher Amar Rav, תלמידי חכמים אין להם מנוחה, אפילו לעולם הבא, שנאמר, ילכו מחיל אל חיל, יראה עד אלוהים בציון. So another similar drasha on the same pasuk, that Torah scholars, they never find rest in this world, right? Speaking about shalom, because they're always active. They always want to achieve the next step, the next highest thing. All right. Whereas when someone goes just to work, so they put in a few hours of work and they go home, and then that's it. They're done. But those who are seeking spiritual heights, they're never satisfied. They always want to go and do another and another. And even after they pass away, they are always continuing that spiritual growth. And that's this pasuk. They will go from strength to strength, and they will merit to see Hashem B'Tzion in times of Mashiach. And so you see, even though it discussed a lot of difficult and sad topics, we end the Masechet on a happy note of continued success and continued walking and studying. So we will end the Masechet with a blessing of Lech Le Shalom, and we'll have our official siyum on Shabbat. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.